The morning had started like any other for Victoria Chen, with her alarm set for 5:30 a.m. sharp. As CEO of Chen Industries, a technology consulting firm she'd built from the ground up over the past 12 years, Victoria's days were meticulously planned down to the minute. Today was especially critical. The Morrison Group merger meeting at 2 p.m. could define her company's trajectory for the next decade. She dressed in her signature power outfit, a charcoal gray Armani suit, pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, and the Louboutin heels she'd bought herself after closing her first $1 million deal. Every detail was calculated to project authority, competence, and success. The drive from her penthouse to the office usually took 45 minutes, but Victoria had allocated an hour to review her presentation notes one final time in the parking garage. She'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months, analyzing every possible question the Morrison board might ask, every objection they might raise. As her silver Mercedes S-Class purred along Highway 47, Victoria mentally rehearsed her opening remarks. The car had been another reward to herself, purchased after Chen Industries hit $50 million in annual revenue. She loved everything about it: the buttery leather seats, the whisper-quiet engine, the way other drivers moved aside when they saw her coming. Then, without warning, the engine coughed. Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The car coughed again, louder this time, and the temperature gauge suddenly spiked into the red zone. Steam began seeping from the edges of the hood. "No, no, no," she muttered, guiding the car to the shoulder as it began to lose power. "Not today. Any day but today." The Mercedes rolled to a stop, and Victoria sat in stunned silence for a moment before the reality hit her. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through her contacts for her usual luxury car service. Hans, her regular mechanic, answered on the third ring. "Miss Chen. What can I do for you?" "Hans, I need you here immediately. The Mercedes just died on Highway 47, near exit 32. There was a pause. "I'm so sorry, Miss Chen, but we're in Riverside right now, handling an emergency for another client. It would take at least 45 minutes to reach you, then time for diagnostics and repair." Victoria ended the call without saying goodbye. 45 minutes was unacceptable. She tried 3 other high-end services, but none could arrive faster. Panic began creeping in, a feeling she hadn't experienced since her early days of building the company, when every meeting could make or break her future. Looking around desperately, she spotted a small building across the highway, a repair shop that looked like it had been transplanted from another era. The faded sign read Marcus's Motors in simple red letters. The building was clean but clearly old, with bay doors that had been repainted multiple times and a small office attached to the side. Victoria weighed her options. Wait for Hans and definitely miss the meeting, or trust her 6-figure vehicle to a shop that probably specialized in decades-old pickups. The choice was humiliating but clear. She called a ride service to take her across the highway. She wasn't about to risk her heels on the roadside gravel. As the driver pulled into the shop's small parking lot, Victoria noticed details she'd normally overlook: the organized tool racks visible through the bay doors, the certified ASE technician stickers on the window, the small garden someone had planted along the building's side. The smell hit her as soon as she stepped out: motor oil, rubber, and something metallic she couldn't identify. It was a working-class smell, one that reminded her uncomfortably of her father's calloused hands when he'd come home from his factory job during her childhood. She'd worked so hard to leave that world behind. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing in the bay. "Is anyone here?" She heard movement from beneath a lifted pickup truck, the sound of wheels rolling on concrete. A man emerged, sliding out on a mechanic's creeper. He was tall, she noticed as he stood, with broad shoulders that spoke of physical work. His dark skin glistened with a light sheen of perspiration, and his coveralls, though stained with grease and oil, were neat and bore a name tag, Marcus Williams, owner. What struck her most were his eyes, intelligent and alert, studying her with the same assessment she used in boardrooms. He grabbed a red rag from his pocket, wiping his hands methodically as he approached. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" His voice was deep and calm, with a slight southern undertone that suggested roots elsewhere. Victoria straightened her spine, slipping into her CEO persona like armor. "My car broke down across the highway. I need it fixed immediately." She paused, then added with emphasis, "It's a Mercedes S-Class. Can you handle that?" If Marcus noticed the implicit insult in her question, he didn't show it. "I'll need to take a look first." "Where exactly is it parked?" Victoria explained the location, her impatience growing with each second. She watched as Marcus moved efficiently, gathering tools and equipment. His movements were purposeful, economical, no wasted motion. Despite her frustration, she found herself noting his competence. "I'll need to tow it here for proper diagnosis," Marcus explained. "My truck's equipped for that. Should take about 15 minutes to get it here, then I can tell you what's wrong." 15 minutes just to get it here. Victoria's voice sharpened. "I have an extremely important meeting at 2 p.m. This delay is already costing me thousands of dollars per minute." Marcus paused in his preparations, turning to face her fully. "Ma'am, I understand you're in a hurry. But doing things right takes time. Would you prefer I rush and potentially cause more damage?" It was a reasonable question, delivered without sarcasm or judgment, which somehow made Victoria feel even more frustrated. She was used to people jumping at her commands, used to money solving problems instantly. This man's calm professionalism in the face of her urgency felt like resistance. "Just, please hurry," she said, the please feeling foreign on her tongue in this context. As Marcus prepared his tow truck, Victoria found herself alone in the waiting area of the shop. It was clean but basic: plastic chairs, a water cooler, magazines that were only a month old rather than years. On the walls hung various certificates and licenses, photos of Marcus with what appeared to be graduating students, and a banner reading Community Partner of the Year 2023. She checked her phone obsessively. 12 missed calls already, all from her assistant trying to coordinate the meeting logistics. Each ring felt like a countdown to disaster. The Morrison Group was notoriously punctual, viewing tardiness as a sign of disrespect and poor management. When Marcus returned with her Mercedes, Victoria was pacing the small waiting area like a caged animal. She watched through the window as he efficiently positioned the car in the bay, her anxiety mounting with each methodical movement. He was clearly skilled, but skill took time she didn't have. As he raised the hood and began his inspection, Victoria couldn't stay in the waiting room. She walked into the bay, her heels clicking incongruously against the concrete floor. Marcus glanced up at her approach but didn't comment on her presence in the work area. "Well," she demanded after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes. Marcus straightened, his expression serious. "You've got multiple cooling system failures. The water pump is damaged, there's a significant leak in the radiator, and the thermostat is stuck closed. This isn't a quick fix." The words hit Victoria like physical blows. "How long to do it properly?" 3 hours minimum. Maybe more depending on parts availability." 3 hours. The number escaped as almost a shriek. That's impossible. My meeting is in 90 minutes. Marcus remained infuriatingly calm, explaining the technical details she didn't want to hear. All Victoria could think about was the months of preparation crumbling, the opportunity of a lifetime slipping away because of mechanical failure and this man's insistence on doing things properly. The stress, frustration, and class anxiety she'd buried for years suddenly boiled over. The words escaped before she could stop them, dripping with sarcasm and a cruelty she'd later be ashamed of. Tell you what, if you can fix this engine in time for my meeting, I'll marry you. How's that for motivation? The moment the words left her mouth, Victoria knew she'd crossed a line. It was the kind of thing she'd heard executives say about their assistants, the casual cruelty of those who viewed service workers as less than human. She'd become everything she'd once promised herself she'd never be. The shop fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Marcus's hands stilled on his tools. When he looked at her, Victoria saw something that cut deeper than anger would have: disappointment, mixed with a hurt that he quickly masked with professional distance. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his dignity intact despite her mockery, "I don't need games or false promises. I'll do my best because it's my job and because you need help. That's what decent people do." The rebuke was gentle but devastating. Victoria felt her face burn with shame, but her pride wouldn't let her apologize. Instead, she turned away, walking back to the waiting area on unsteady legs, leaving Marcus to work in peace. As she sat in the hard plastic chair, Victoria couldn't shake the image of his eyes in that moment, the quiet strength, the refusal to be diminished by her words. She'd meant to motivate with mockery, but instead, she'd revealed something ugly about herself. Outside, Marcus worked on her engine with the same careful attention he'd shown before her outburst, proving that true professionalism had nothing to do with promises or rewards, and everything to do with character. Victoria sat rigidly in the plastic waiting room chair, her designer suit feeling suddenly ostentatious against the honest simplicity of her surroundings. Through the large window separating the waiting area from the work bay, she could see Marcus bent over her Mercedes's engine, his movements deliberate and focused. The shame from her outburst minutes earlier sat like a stone in her stomach, but her pride built walls around it, refusing to let her acknowledge the cruelty of her words. She tried to focus on her phone, scrolling through the merger documents for the 100th time, but her eyes kept drifting back to the mechanic. Marcus had called in another worker, a younger man whose name tag read Tommy, and they worked in synchronized efficiency, occasionally exchanging brief words she couldn't hear through the glass. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, her executive assistant, was calling again. "Victoria, the Morrison team is asking about the pre-meeting lunch. Should I try to push everything back an hour?" "No," Victoria snapped, then caught herself. Sarah didn't deserve her frustration. "I mean, let me think about it. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. She ended the call and stood, pacing the small waiting area. The wall seemed to close in with each passing minute. 23 minutes until she'd need to leave to make the meeting on time. The math was impossible, but she couldn't accept it. Unable to contain herself any longer, Victoria pushed through the door into the work bay. The smell of motor oil was stronger here, mixed with the metallic scent of hot engine parts. Marcus glanced up at her approach but didn't stop working. "Any progress?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Marcus straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "We're moving as fast as we safely can. Tommy's checking our inventory for the thermostat now. The water pump will take more time, it's not easily accessible in this model. Can't you just..." Victoria gestured vaguely at the engine, Skip some steps? Do a temporary fix. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ma'am, a temporary fix on a cooling system could leave you stranded on the highway, possibly with a seized engine. That would turn a $3,000 repair into a $30,000 replacement. I don't care about the money, Victoria said, immediately regretting how that sounded. Maybe not, Marcus replied evenly, but I care about my reputation and your safety. I won't send anyone out of my shop in an unsafe vehicle. Tommy returned, shaking his head. We don't have the exact thermostat in stock, boss. But Rodriguez Auto Parts has one. I can be there and back in 15 minutes. Go, Marcus said simply, and Tommy jogged toward a shop truck. Victoria watched this exchange with growing amazement. The easy authority Marcus displayed, the loyalty Tommy showed, the smooth operation despite the pressure, it reminded her of her own best teams at Chen Industries. You run a tight ship, she found herself saying. Marcus glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. Thank you. We try to do things right here. An uncomfortable silence fell. Victoria knew she should apologize for her earlier words, but the apology stuck in her throat. Instead, she found herself studying the shop more carefully. Everything was meticulously organized, tools on shadow boards showing exactly where each belonged, parts bins clearly labeled, safety equipment prominently displayed. How long have you owned this place? She asked, desperate to fill the silence with something other than her shame. 12 years, Marcus replied, returning to work on her engine. Bought it from Mr. Rodriguez when he retired. He taught me everything I know about running a business. And before that, Marcus paused in his work. Army. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan as a mechanic. Used my GI benefits to get my degree when I got out. Victoria felt another stab of shame. She'd assumed so much about this man based on his job, his shop, his work clothes. What did you study? Mechanical engineering at Howard, then an MBA through night school. He said it matter-of-factly, without boasting. Figured if I was going to run a business, I should know how to do it right. The credentials hung in the air between them. Victoria realized with growing discomfort that Marcus was likely as educated as many of her own executives, perhaps more so. Yet here she'd stood, in her expensive suit, making marriage jokes like he was beneath consideration as a human being. Why didn't you go corporate? She asked, genuinely curious now. With those credentials, you could be making 6 figures easily. Marcus looked up at her then, really looked at her, and Victoria felt exposed under his steady gaze. Money isn't everything, Miss Chen. Victoria Chen. Miss Chen. I grew up 6 blocks from here. This community gave me everything: mentors, opportunities, second chances when I needed them. Mr. Rodriguez took a chance on a young black veteran with big dreams and rough edges. Now I get to pay that forward. He gestured toward the wall of photos she'd noticed earlier. Those are all kids from the neighborhood who've gone through our apprentice program. Some went to college, some started their own shops, some work for dealerships now. That's worth more than any corporate salary. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. When was the last time she'd thought about her work in terms of community impact rather than profit margins? Tommy returned with the thermostat, and the work resumed with increased intensity. Victoria found herself mesmerized by their efficiency. Marcus directed the operation with quiet authority, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. She noticed the small things: how he double-checked every connection, how he cleaned each part before installing it, how he explained each step to Tommy, turning the repair into a teaching moment. "You're training him," she observed. Marcus nodded without looking up. "Tommy's got real talent. He'll have his own shop someday, or maybe take over this one when I'm ready to step back." The casual mention of succession planning impressed her. How many small business owners thought that far ahead? Her phone buzzed again. The Morrison team was at the restaurant. Sarah was running out of stalling tactics. "Listen," Victoria said, her voice tight with renewed stress. "I know you're doing your best, but this meeting, it's not just important. It's everything. I've worked for 6 months on this deal. If I don't show up, they'll think you don't value their time," Marcus finished. "That you're unreliable, unprofessional. I understand." The empathy in his voice almost broke her. "Then can't you? What I can do," Marcus interrupted gently, "is call some colleagues. See if anyone can loan us their bay and tools to speed this up. It's unusual, but for an emergency." He was already pulling out his phone, and Victoria listened as he made call after call. Not demanding, not throwing money around, just explaining the situation and asking for help. 3 shops said no, they were too busy. But the 4th? "Jerome?" "Yeah, it's Marcus. Listen, I've got a situation here." "Yeah, a customer with a real emergency." "I know it's a big ask." "You would?" "Man, I owe you one." "We'll be there in 10. Marcus hung up and immediately started organizing tools. "Jerome's got a fully equipped bay he can loan us for an hour. His shop has a lift that'll make accessing the water pump much easier. We can probably cut an hour off the repair time." "You're moving the entire operation?" Victoria asked, stunned. "It's what needs to happen," Marcus said simply. "Tommy, load up everything we'll need. Miss Chen, you can ride with us or follow in a ride service." The next 20 minutes were a blur of organized chaos. Victoria watched Marcus transform from mechanic to logistics coordinator, managing the transfer of parts, tools, and her vehicle with military precision. At Jerome's shop, a larger, newer facility, she saw the respect other mechanics showed Marcus, the way they cleared space without complaint, how Jerome himself came out to help. "Marcus helped me save my shop 3 years ago," Jerome told Victoria quietly as they watched the work proceed. "Walked me through restructuring my debt, connected me with better suppliers, even loaned me tools when mine got stolen. That man's the real deal." With 2 bays, 4 mechanics, and Marcus coordinating like a conductor, the repair time dropped dramatically. Victoria found herself checking her phone less, caught up in the ballet of competence before her. These men took pride in their work, in solving problems, in helping each other. "Miss Chen," Marcus called out, "we're going to test the engine now. If everything holds, you'll be on your way in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. She'd make her meeting with minutes to spare. As the engine roared to life, purring smoothly, Victoria felt a mix of relief and something else: respect. Deep, genuine respect for the man who'd made this happen despite her earlier cruelty. "Thank you," she said quietly when Marcus approached with her keys. What I said earlier was spoken in stress," Marcus said, but his eyes remained guarded. "We all say things we don't mean when we're pushed to our limits." It was a gracious out, but Victoria knew she didn't deserve it. As she paid the bill, Marcus charging her only for parts and standard labor despite the extraordinary effort, she felt the weight of unfinished business between them. Driving away, her Mercedes running perfectly, Victoria couldn't shake the image of Marcus coordinating the repair, of the respect he commanded, of the community he'd built. She'd make her meeting, close her deal, add millions to her company's value. But for the first time in years, that victory felt hollow compared to what she'd witnessed in those garages: people helping people, dignity in honest work, and a man who'd shown her more grace than she'd shown him. The Morrison meeting awaited, but Victoria knew that something fundamental had shifted in her worldview. Marcus Williams had fixed more than her engine. He'd exposed the flaws in her own character, and that repair would take much longer to complete. The presentation to the Morrison Group board had gone flawlessly. Victoria had arrived with 3 minutes to spare, her Mercedes sliding into the parking garage as if the morning's chaos had never happened. She'd delivered her pitch with her usual precision, answered every question with data-backed confidence, and watched the board members nod approvingly at her 5-year projection charts. Yet throughout the 2-hour meeting, her mind kept drifting to Marcus Williams. As she'd outlined Chen Industries' expansion plans, she'd thought of Marcus expanding his shop's impact through his apprentice program. When board members praised her company's efficiency metrics, she remembered the balletic coordination of mechanics working to save her day. And when they'd finally agreed to the merger terms, a deal that would net her company $40 million, the victory felt strangely muted. Now, 3 weeks later, Victoria sat in her corner office on the 32nd floor, staring at the check she'd written. $5,000, made out to Marcus's Motors. It was 10 times what he'd charged her, but it still felt inadequate. How did you put a price on dignity? How did you compensate someone for exposing your own character flaws with such devastating grace? Her assistant knocked. Miss Chen? Your 3 p.m. is here. Cancel it, Victoria said impulsively. Actually, cancel everything for the rest of the day. Sarah's surprise was evident even through the door. Is everything all right? Yes. I have something important to handle. An hour later, Victoria stood outside Marcus's Motors again. She'd changed from her business suit into jeans and a simple blouse, clothes she rarely wore anymore. In her hands, she carried a box from Amelie's, the French bakery that had a 3-week waiting list. It seemed absurd now, bringing pastries as a peace offering, but she didn't know how else to begin. The shop looked exactly the same, but Victoria saw it differently now. She noticed the wheelchair ramp that had been added to the office entrance, the safe space sticker in the window, the bulletin board by the door covered in thank you notes from customers. Through the bay door, she could see Marcus working on a minivan, Tommy beside him. They were laughing about something, the easy camaraderie of people who enjoyed their work and each other. Victoria hesitated. What right did she have to interrupt their peace? Before she could decide, Tommy spotted her. His eyes widened in recognition, and he nudged Marcus, who was deep in the engine compartment. Marcus emerged slowly, his expression unreadable when he saw her. Miss Chen, he said, wiping his hands on the ever-present red rag. Car trouble again? No, Victoria said, her rehearsed speech evaporating. I came to apologize. Properly this time. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward the office. Tommy, take over here. Check the belt tension like I showed you. The office was small but neat, with a desk covered in invoices and parts catalogs. Victoria noticed a diploma on the wall, his MBA from Temple University, alongside photos of what must be family members and more shots of young people in graduation caps and gowns. I brought these, Victoria said awkwardly, setting the pastry box on his desk. They're from Amelie's. I didn't know what else. You didn't need to bring anything, Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its guardedness. What did you want to say? Victoria took a breath. For someone who made her living with words, she found herself struggling. What I said 3 weeks ago was inexcusable. It was cruel, classist, and revealed some ugly truths about who I've become. You were helping me in my worst moment, and I responded with mockery. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I've been thinking about it ever since. How easily those words came out. How I've let success turn me into someone who sees people as beneath consideration based on their job or appearance. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned offices at night. I've become the kind of person who would have looked down on them. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. That's a hard thing to realize about yourself. It's harder to live with, Victoria admitted. I keep thinking about how you responded. You could have told me to leave, refused to help. Instead, you called in favors, reorganized your entire day, and got me to my meeting. After I'd insulted you. You were stressed, Marcus said simply. People aren't at their best when they're stressed. Stop giving me an out, Victoria said, surprising herself with her vehemence. I need to own this. What I said wasn't about stress. It was about arrogance. About forgetting that every person deserves respect regardless of their job title. A silence stretched between them. Marcus opened the pastry box, a small smile crossing his face. Amelie's, huh? I've heard about this place. My sister's been trying to get a reservation for months. Your sister? She's a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital. Always teasing me that I could have been a doctor too if I'd applied myself. His smile widened. I tell her I am a doctor. Just for cars. Victoria found herself smiling too. That's actually profound. The diagnostic process is similar, isn't it? Symptoms, testing, treatment plans. Exactly. Marcus's enthusiasm was infectious. And just like medicine, you can't cut corners. People's lives depend on their vehicles working properly. They talked for an hour, the conversation flowing with surprising ease. Victoria learned about Marcus's family, his sister the surgeon, his brother who taught high school history, his parents who'd worked multiple jobs to ensure their children could attend college. She shared her own story, the long hours building her company, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt, the isolation that came with success. Can I ask you something? Marcus said eventually. Why did you really come back? The apology, I appreciate it. But you could have just sent a card, made a donation to the shop. Why come in person? Victoria considered the question. Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, that decent people help because it's right, not for reward. I realized I'd lost sight of that. Somewhere along the way, everything became transactional for me. Every relationship measured by its potential return on investment. She paused, gathering courage. And because I was curious about you. Someone who responds to cruelty with kindness, who has multiple degrees but chooses to run a community shop, who commands respect without demanding it. I wanted to understand. And do you understand? I'm beginning to, Victoria said. You've built something here that's about more than profit margins. Those kids in the photos, you're changing their lives. Marcus's face lit up with pride. Want to see something? He led her back into the shop, to a corner she hadn't noticed before. It was set up like a classroom, with workbenches, tools, and a whiteboard covered in diagrams. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, we run free classes for local high school students. Basic maintenance, career skills, life skills. Some discover they love working with their hands. Others just learn how to maintain their own cars someday. All of them learn they're capable of more than they thought. Victoria watched him explain the program, his passion evident in every word. This was someone who'd found his purpose, who measured success in lives changed rather than dollars earned. Would you? She started, then stopped. Never mind. What? I was going to ask if you'd let me help somehow. Sponsor the program, maybe. But that feels like I'm trying to buy my way out of guilt. Marcus considered this. Depends on why you want to help. If it's about guilt, then no. But if it's about genuinely wanting to support these kids' futures. It's both, Victoria admitted. I can't pretend it's purely altruistic. But seeing this, hearing you talk about it, I want to be part of something that matters like this. Tell you what, Marcus said. Come to a class first. See what we do, meet the kids. Then we can talk about how you might contribute beyond just writing a check. You'd trust me around your students. After how I acted. People deserve second chances, Miss Chen. That's one of the first things we teach here. As Victoria prepared to leave, she felt lighter than she had in years. The merger success that had consumed her thoughts for months seemed less significant than this small step toward redemption. Thank you, she said at the door. For the second chance. For showing me what I'd lost sight of. We all lose our way sometimes, Marcus replied. The important thing is finding the road back. Driving away, Victoria realized she'd found more than a road back, she'd found a new direction entirely. The check in her purse would be donated to the program, but that would just be the beginning. Marcus Williams had shown her what leadership with humanity looked like, and she was determined to learn the lesson properly this time. Her phone rang Sarah with questions about tomorrow's meetings. For the first time in years, Victoria let it go to voicemail. Some things were more important than the next deal, and she'd already waited 3 weeks too long to understand that truth.